Hi there, I'm WTOL 11 Chief Meteorologist Vickers, and we are here with this year's WTOL 11 winter weather outlook. And many of us excited about the thought of maybe some snow that will be falling in the coming months here. But the big question will be, before the snowflakes begin to fall and the snow piles potentially begin to grow, what does the data say in the 2024 and 2025 winter weather outlook? And the entire WTOL 11 weather team has already analyzed the data. We're also going to break down how climate and climate change may be impacting our local weather patterns. So let's dive into some of what the data actually says. One of the impacts this year, do you remember last year? It was an El Nino winter. This year, it's going to be the opposite phase, a La Nina winter phase. How that may impact our winter weather, and if we think that will be a big factor this year, we're going to dive into the details on that. Let's first recap where we've been over the past year or two here. Our winter seasons have been quite bleak the past few years. In fact, we have back-to-back winter seasons that are now in the top 5 all-time least snowiest winters in Toledo's history. That includes last year. It was really the winter that wasn't 2023 and 2024. We failed to even reach 10 inches of snow. We have never done that in recorded history. On average, we see about 37.5 inches of snow, and this is a climate trend here in a warmer winter season. We now have back-to-back winter seasons that have been in the top 5 least snowiest winters on record. You remember last year, December was the warmest all-time on record. We were nearly 9 degrees above average. That warmth continued into the month of January, very below average snowfall. And we rounded out the winter season, so to speak, in February, 8.9 degrees above average, another very warm winter season that really melted away any hopes of any widespread snow. Now, all this really hinges on our midwinter season. Here's the projected average snowfall of a winter season. It peaks as expected December, January, and into February. I'll be very clear about this one. December into January, this is going to be a pivotal time in our winter weather forecast. On average, we see about 12 inches of snow in the month of January. If we don't see any signs that colder air is going to be materializing, it could once again be another season of below average snowfall. So what does the data say? We're expecting a likelihood of a La Nina winter this year. Now, that can favor colder and snowier winter weather, but I'll caution you on this. It does depend on the strength of the La Nina, the location, and we firmly believe there will be many other characteristics that may end up influencing our winter weather beyond La Nina. So I'll give you a quick look at what La Nina means. This is cooler than average equatorial Pacific water across the equatorial region. That modifies the jet stream. That is something that we're going to be watching for in the upcoming winter season. But I'm going to give you the top list here, 7 things that influence our winter weather season here in Northwest Ohio and southern Michigan. It could be Siberian and Canadian snow cover, the Great Lakes and the ice cover that we see on the Great Lakes, hitting on the big one. To be honest, any winter season could be defined by one memorable generational storm. We also have connections to our oceans, the Arctic, the Atlantic, and the Pacific. I'll dive more into this. The polar vortex. Yes, will it make a return this winter season? And how will it impact our weather? A general warming climate, and a breakdown of the La Nina or El Nino pattern that will be expected to be evolving. So let me start with snow cover. Well, really not much to be seen across the region, including below average amounts up into Canada. We actually have to go all the way across the globe into Siberia, where we see above average snow cover. This is a possible breeding ground for late season cold. Again, that pivotal time, January into February, could we see outbreaks of colder air that would originate from the cold region of Siberia? Now, the polar vortex, all signs right now pointing toward a strong polar vortex, which bottom line means that Arctic air stays very stable up there in the polar regions. Should we see disruptions to that or a shift from a stronger polar vortex to a weaker phase, that would result in a disruption of that polar vortex, and it sends Arctic air spilling out of the Arctic down into the Great Lakes and into the eastern half of the United States. This could be pivotal in some of the colder air that we could see this upcoming winter season. Now, I'm going to get technical just for a moment here. Another indication we look at is called the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. right now, very warm waters over the Pacific Ocean, coupled with an area of below average readings that results in a negative phase in the Pacific decadal oscillation. This phase, coupled with our current ongoing La Nina, generates a weather pattern like this: a blocking high pressure system in the North Pacific that generates the polar jet stream into the Pacific Northwest, the northern tier of the United States, and generally it leaves us milder than average into the winter season. Warmer than average conditions, the southeast to the mid-Atlantic, back into the Great Lakes region. This is going to strongly reflect in our winter weather forecast. So here's the data on this. We expect above average temperatures into the Great Lakes region into the winter season. But notice this, that polar jet stream, or the colder than average weather, is going to be cutting across the nation's midsection. That may create an active pattern into the winter season. So as far as precipitation goes, that may mean above average precipitation into the winter season. That's what our forecast is going to be. Now, I'll caution you, that does not mean above average snowfall, because we're going to be seeing above average precipitation, much like last winter season. With the warmth we're expecting, that wetter than normal weather could be in the form of rain. So what do the numbers look like? Let's get into the final winter weather forecast. We're looking at temperatures that will be above average this season. It may range several degrees above average over the entire winter season, December, January, and into February. How about the winter snowfall? We are expecting below average snowfall. Again, an average winter season would bring about 37.5 inches of snowfall. We're expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 28 inches of snowfall, which would once again bring below average snowfall to our area through the upcoming winter season. Now, I'll encourage you to stay ahead of what we're expecting this winter season. You could go ahead and download that WTOL 11 weather app. We will send you alerts, we will send you notifications, and also videos right here from the WTOL 11 weather team indicating what we're expecting through the course of the winter season. No surprise, though, we've seen a changing climate. Let's send it over to meteorologist John Burchfield for a breakdown of what this means for our winter season.
Now, our first snowfall of the season this year is actually a bit later than usual. So when do we normally see that first snow in Toledo, Northwest Ohio, and southern Michigan? The statistics show that in mid-November, more specifically November 17th, that is when we see that first snowfall of the season in the Toledo metro. Now, first snow is defined as measurable snow, which is anything 1/10 of an inch or more. What if we stack up to about an inch of snowfall, the first meaningful snow of the winter season? That comes a bit later in November, typically right after Thanksgiving. That first inch of snow accumulation occurs on November 29th, and as we head towards December, that is when snowfall becomes more likely, especially accumulating snow. So what do the statistics say about November snowfall? Even though we're off to a bit of a later start than usual to the snowfall season, things can change towards the latter half of the month. A normal November features 1.7 inches of snowfall, really just leapfrogging into the start of the winter season, but not really providing any meaningful snow. That's typical, though. However, some Novembers can really dose out significant snowfall. The highest ever monthly November snow, close to 18 inches, and that occurred in 1966. So it goes to show sometimes winter can strike early. Last year, we only saw 0.2 of an inch of November snow accumulation, and the year prior, paltry November snowfall totals as always. So the winter season as a whole, how does snowfall break down on a month-by-month basis? For those who have been living in the area for quite a while, this may not be surprising that January is statistically the snowiest month of the year. Even though November really doesn't bring much meaningful snow on average, we start to see some more significant accumulations in December with an average of over half a foot of snowfall. We double that during the month of January with over a foot of snowfall on average, and the tail end of the winter season, as we've seen in recent years, can really bring some harsh wintry weather in terms of big snowstorms and bitter cold. And February on average, our second snowiest month, with just a hair over 10 inches of average accumulation. Now, just for those snow lovers out there, the snowiest season on average, that occurred in recent memory, 86.3 inches of accumulation, 2013 to 2014. And the least snow, well, last winter, hardly a winter at all, with less than 10 inches of total accumulation over the course of the season. So what about the month of November in particular? The last 2 Novembers have really not brought much in the way of snow accumulation, just 0.2 in 2023 and 0.4 the year prior. You have to go back to 2021 for any sort of significant November snow, and that did bring us well above average early season snow, amounting to close to 4 inches of accumulation. And November of 2020 was closer to normal with 1.3 inches of snowfall, despite several record high temperatures that happened during November of 2020. So that's how the numbers stack up in terms of the month of November. Of course, you may be wondering, after last winter that really didn't produce much snowfall at all, are we due for one this year? Let's break down the numbers behind last winter's paltry snowfall totals that failed to even reach the 10-inch barrier. A normal season of snowfall in the Toledo area features snowfall totals a little bit over 3 feet of accumulation, and we were less than a third of that number, over 27 inches below normal, the season of 2023 to 2024. The least snowy seasons on record. Of course, topping that list, 2023 to 2024, at the very top in yellow, the only time we failed to even reach the double-digit snowfall amounts. 1918 to 1919, not much snow with just a hair over a foot. If you look back to 82 to 83, 12.5 inches. Of course, the year after that really was the polar opposite with much heavier snowfall amounts. 1948 to 1949, and rounding out the list, another recent winter, 2022 to 2023. It seems like these winters without much snowfall becoming a little bit more commonplace, at least based on the latest statistics. The greatest snowfall, 2013 to 2014, with over 86 inches of accumulation. And in the Toledo area, we average a little bit over 3 feet of snowfall total. So how is climate change impacting winter weather? Of course, each and every winter is merely an anecdote amidst the broader range of data, and we have to look at the bigger trends to infer how winter is changing. Last winter, of course, fit within the fingerprint or the blueprint of what climate change is doing and making winters a bit milder and less snowy on average. So here's some of the biggest changes that we're seeing to the winter season. In general, December weather is growing milder. In fact, December is the month that has been affected by climate change the most of all 12 months in the Toledo area. Winters are also becoming more backloaded. Basically what that means is we're getting off to a slower start as far as snowfall is concerned, and we're saving some of that snowfall for after the new year. In other words, a lot of February snowstorms, but much quieter December weather, more mild days becoming commonplace, and also a reminder that weather does not equal climate, and the day-to-day variations in the weather are due to jet stream patterns and individual fluctuations in our climate, as opposed to those broader trends that are exemplified by climate change. In the past decade alone, new climate data shows us that winter has warmed up by anywhere from 2 to 3 degrees, depending on the month, and that's significant because that's over a relatively short period of time, and the changes within the last half century to century have been even greater than that. December is the month that has been affected the most by climate change, with a warming trend of over 3 degrees, and of course that warming trend is one of the reasons that November snowfall is becoming less commonplace. More precipitation in the form of liquid, less precipitation in the form of snowfall. December changes as a whole. Not surprisingly, as the last few years have attested to, December snowfall is decreasing. In general, temperatures are going way up during the month of December, with a 3+ degree warming trend based on the latest climate data. Snowfall has actually gone down, and that latest data set shows us that snowfall during the month of December, on average, is almost an inch below what it used to be. Mild days becoming more commonplace, and that could potentially impact white Christmas chances as well. In general, the chances of that blanket of snow on Christmas morning are becoming less likely. Of course, that is what the statistics show us based on the framework of climate change, but year-to-year variation, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have white Christmases. It's just going to be a little bit less common on average. So how has each and every month been impacted by climate change? December is the month at the very tail end of this graph that has seen the biggest warming trend in terms of climate. Late spring and early summer has also seen some big changes, May and June, with over 2 degrees of warming. And as far as the winter season is concerned, November temperatures have not really been affected quite as much, with only a 1.3 degree warming trend. Compare that to December, which has been affected impacted substantially by climate change, and after the new year, January and February have also seen that warming trend, but it's been less noticeable than the month of December. In other words, December snowfall becoming less common, and December temperatures are going way up.
Make sure you stay ahead of the winter season. Download that WTOL 11 weather app. Chief Meteorologist Chris Vickers. Have a good one.